we have some documents that we need to discuss in the Bryan Kohberger case. So let's do that now without further ado. So this is the state's response to the coalition of media organizations' motion to be heard as interested parties and motion to vacate the non-dissemination order or the gag order. So the defendant pleaded guilty on July 2nd, 2025, all charges in this case. At the change of plea hearing, the court asked the parties their position on whether the non-dissemination order in this case should be maintained. The state requested, and that the court granted that request for the non-dissemination order to remain in effect through the sentencing. Upon further reflection, the state withdraws this request. Now that the defendant has pleaded guilty as charged on all 5 counts of the indictment, his right to a fair trial and the issue of guilt is no longer an issue. Nevertheless, out of respect for the integrity of the judicial process and the privacy of the victims and their families, as they consider their right to provide victim impact statements at sentencing, the prosecution team does not intend to make any public statements about the case until after sentencing has concluded. I've talked with some of the victims' family members, and I know that they're in the process of writing their impact statement. And one of their issues was, or one of their complaints was, that they don't know everything that happened. And to me, it sounds like the prosecution is not going to sit with them and tell them all that they know until after sentencing. And so that, as they were writing their victim impact statements, it's been something that's been kind of difficult to do for the most part. So just kind of wanted to lead with that for this instance here. And I feel for the families. They want to know and they want answers, and not even them can get some, because mainly this non-dissemination order. But they say, hey, we're not going to talk about it, but they're going to release it. Maybe perhaps we'll get some information. Now, the defense has responded. The defense has responded, and this is the opposition to the motion of vacate non-dissemination order. And I'll go through this. So obviously, Bryan Kohberger's team has said no, even though they really didn't have a stance when the state asked for it. When the judge asked, hey, do y'all, about the non-dissemination order, the state said, yeah, we'll keep it. Defense said it had no objection. They didn't really care. But now they do. So this is and apparently this isn't out yet. So you're seeing it here first. Opposition to the motion to vacate non-dissemination order comes now. Bryan Kohberger and through his attorneys of record and hereby request court for an order maintaining revised amended non-dissemination order issued for June 23rd, 2023 until sentencing. Mr. Kohberger's request regarding the order is based on, 1, the language of the order has not been previously challenged by the media, the ongoing publicity regarding the case, and threats to Mr. Kohberger's safety, and the ongoing special inquiry and the hold order for all witnesses issued by the court. So they're saying that the language that the media used when they wanted to remove this isn't correct. So whatever. The second one is because of the ongoing publicity regarding the case and Mr. Kohberger's safety. But what does that have to do with his right for a fair trial and why there's need to be a gag order? I'm sorry. I mean, there's none of that has anything to do with it, unless they're so concerned that the information that's about to come out, there's going to be some sort of uproar. Maybe they're concerned about that there might be some sort of, I don't know, attack on the courthouse, I guess. If you go back and watch the change of plea hearing, you can see in the courtroom, there's quite a few people there. I mean, law enforcement people. They had that place locked down. There was a lot of security. We talked to Alina Smith, who was there at the courtroom, and she talked about the intense security that they had to go through. So what safety, threats for Mr. Kohberger? Is it coming from other inmates? Is he afraid that once they hear what he had did, that maybe they're going to attack him? But how is that going to change after sentencing? He's still going back home there, until he gets, removed to the maximum state prison. So interesting. So the language and the revised amended non-dissemination order issued June 23, 2023, specifically ran through sentencing. In response to the significant litigation in the Idaho Supreme Court ruling On this issue, in this case, the court issued a revised amended non-dissemination order on June 23rd. By its terms, the order was to remain in full force and effect until the conclusion of the trial and any sentencing proceedings that may follow, unless ordered by this court. After this order was issued, the interested parties, hereinafter the media, raised no further objections to the revised order. The revised order recognized that Mr. Kohberger's rights extended beyond the questioning of guilt or innocence in his right to a fair sentencing proceeding. But like, you're not tainting anybody. You know, the person that's going to be making the sentencing is the judge, and he's seen all the information. So what does keeping the information sealed, how does that infringe on a fair sentencing proceeding? I've never even heard that before. You know, I've heard of a fair trial and things of that nature. But a fair sentencing, keeping a non-dissemination order for a fair sentencing proceeding, that's, like I said, who are you trying not to taint? The judge has seen everything. He knows more about, he's been in the ex parte meeting hearings. He's been there for everything. He knows more than the prosecution, in my opinion, in certain instances. Regarding of whether the proceeding is reached via a jury verdict or plea. The motion filed by the media is to vacate the revised order, asserts that once a guilty plea is entered, that the right to a fair trial under the Sixth Amendment is extinguished. Well, we just heard from the state, and Bill Thompson kind of feels the same way too. Like, hey, there's a plea, it's been accepted. The right for a fair trial is over. There's no point. They're not going to taint any juries. There's not going to be a juror. There's not going to be a trial for a jury. But the media fails to recognize that Mr. Kohberger retains his rights to a fair sentence proceeding guaranteed under the Fourth Amendment and his right to effective assistance of counsel under the Sixth Amendment of the Idaho Constitution. The defendant's right to effective assistance of counsel extends to all critical stages of the prosecution where his substantial rights may be affected, and sentencing is one such stage. In this case, substantial dangers of prejudice to Mr. Kohberger exists up to and through sentencing. Prejudice of what? He's admitted guilt. He's the murderer. Like, this is stupid. At this court is well aware there have been numerous leaks of confidential information of the press and an avalanche of publicity that continues with release of the Peacock documentary, The Idaho Student Murders, the Amazon Prime series on July 11, 2025, and the book by James Patterson on July 14th. Lifting the revised order now, this close to sentencing, would only increase the media frenzy and the publicity around the case. So what? So what? It's not like it's going to affect a jury. This is stupid. The ongoing publicity in this case threatens Mr. Kohberger's safety. As set forth in Section 1, the amount of publicity coming before the sentencing, even with the revised order in place, is massive. Further, release would only serve to gin up the anger and the violent rhetoric already at a fever pitch. Why? Why do you think that's going to happen? Do you think that's going to happen because we're going to find out some pretty crazy stuff that we don't know about? You get what I'm saying? Like we already know a lot. A lot has come out. Everybody knows a lot about this case. We don't know everything. Is there a lot more to learn? Is that what this is trying to infer? There is a lot more to learn. Again, this court is aware of the threats posted not only to Mr. Kohberger, but his family and the court staff. So is his family going to be attending the hearing? You know, are they afraid that if they go out there and this information is released, that now something might be directed towards them? Maybe perhaps there's something more that we're going to find out that might implicate his family. I mean, Howard Bloom talks about how one of the reasons why Bryan Kohberger took the plea deal was because he didn't want to implicate his parents. Now, I don't know how true that is. To me, the guy's a psychopath. I don't think he has any feelings or cares in the world. You know, maybe perhaps he has some sort of weird affection with his mother. But outside of that, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, you know, it's just my speculation. But, you know, outside of that, based on the things that he wrote about his own father and other people and himself, you know, I think he's a psychopath. He's a sociopath. He doesn't have any feelings. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. He's a narcissist. At this point, the press has access to every witness who is not an agent of their party, as the court noted, and is now the motion to vacate the amended non-dissemination order in 2023. The media is not restrained. Only the parties are restrained. and those restraints are reasonable. Both parties had no objection to the indeed sought out to have the Both parties had no objection and indeed sought to have the revised order remain in place at least until sentencing. That's not the case anymore. It's not the case anymore. The prosecution said no, let it go. Mr. Kohberger requests the court deny the media request to vacate the revised order ahead of sentencing in order to maintain the integrity of the proceeding of the process and the scrutiny of the safety and all of the parties involved, including families, courts, staff, and attorney. The revised order should remain in effect. The revised order is reasonable in scope and does not impinge on the media's ability to investigate the report on this case. Maintaining the revised order will minimize the media frenzy leading up to sentencing. I'm sorry, Ann Taylor, but what business of it yours what the media does at this point? If they have a frenzy, if they want to talk about it, if they don't want to talk about it, there is absolutely no tainting of any jury that can happen at this point. The judge is the one that's going to decide the sentence. So are you afraid that he's going to watch something and that something is going to convince him of changing the sentences that's already been agreed to at the maximum level outside of death? He's got 4 life sentences without the possibility of parole. And they're to run one after another. So what is he going to do? Add a 5th one? Like, what is he going to do? He's going to hear something and be like, oh my God, I didn't know about this fact, even though I've seen all the discovery. I've seen all the evidence. I've seen everything outside of how they plan to interpretate it. He's seen the ex parte meetings. He's seen behind the veil, so to speak. What is Dateline or DT Show or anybody else going to find in these non-disseminate, or that the non-dissemination order has been hiding, that all of a sudden is going to maybe change the mind of the judge, and now he's going to be like, yo, this guy, you know what, I'm going to give him death. Is that what the fear is at this point? At the end of the day, a plea has been accepted and the terms of the plea have been accepted. I don't know. This is just stupid. It really is. Not gonna lie, it's what it is. It's stupid, and hopefully the non-dissemination order gets dropped. So we have Natalie James. Before we get into the my prediction is that it's going to be dropped on the 17th. So like, comment, subscribe, guys, because we already got those FOIAs working on a bunch of stuff. So we're going to be able to bring in a lot of that evidence to you guys of what it was, with obvious, some respect to the victims and their family members. If something comes out like the body cam of Officer Nunez, and I'm not going to air what he saw or any of those type of things. That's not going to come out on my channel. But the other things, maybe some of the things that they believe Bryan Kohberger had done, if he was Papa Rogers, those type of things. Natalie James 999 BK is using this to remain relevant, torment and control. As my son would say, he's a clown trying to flex. That's interesting. I actually think you're probably right there. To be 110% honest with you, I think you're right. That body cam won't be released. I hope not. All righty, guys. Without further ado, let's get into the conversation of the book and who is Bryan Kohberger, because this is going to be the next point of this book, is who is Bryan Kohberger.